March 2025. That marks the 5th year since the pandemic was declared, the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'm speaking to Pranay Lal, who is a biochemist but author of 2 seminal books, Indica, that's a deep natural history of Indian subcontinent. And during the pandemic itself, there's the invisible empire, the viruses and natural history of viruses. I'll be speaking to Pranay Lal now as we observe, rather very sadly, the 5th anniversary or the 6th year of the rampage of the coronavirus. Pranay, welcome.
Thank you.
And it's sometimes very intriguing. Viruses are not visible to us. On and off, we actually suffer the ferocity of it. But most of the time, there are thousands of viruses that we have been fighting successfully, we live with it. So the first things, who are these viruses exactly? Means in our ecosystems, are they alive or the living organisms? Who are they exactly?
This is an enigma that is so difficult to define because they clearly have a symmetry and they clearly contain a nucleic acid. So any two things that contain this and can come to life means they are a life form. The only thing they don't do is exhibit any sense of or any remote sense of being alive when they're outside their host. So to become alive, they have to infect something. And Richard, like I wrote in my book, we imagine that our kidneys and our urine and our brain do not contain, they are sterile, but that's not true. We have discovered a virus that circulates in our spinal fluid. We've got a virus that circulates in our kidneys that also comes out of our urine. So whatever we thought was sterile is not sterile. In fact, these viruses exist for a reason. They protect us from other viruses and other microbes. So we have to live with viruses. We can't wish them away.
So you basically indicating that we all are viral.
We all are viromes, yes. We are all carrying a whole microbial community, a massive microbial community within us and around us all the time. You can't get away with it.
How many viruses are there? Do we have an estimate?
We can't, because they will mutate and speciate so quickly that we can't even imagine. So even if you were to do, we have very good technology called whole genome sequencing and nanopore technology, all of those things. They can tell you, for example, 1 gram of soil right here, how many viruses are there, how many bacteria are there. That's easy to find. But can you do it for the entire world? Can you do it for the air? Can you do it for the soil, for the depth of the soils? How far will we go? And for every organism, within every creature, within the gut, within every body fluid, how far will we go? I mean, there's unlimited biological material.
But now in those scenarios, in the context of the pandemic, they are a threat. So, do you see actually the viral attacks are going to increase? We don't know them, but there are so many viruses. What are the 3 lessons that coming out of our experience of the pandemic?
So I think the 3 lessons that come from COVID-19, that we haven't learned, frankly, the lessons. We still we are not humble enough to understand that we are not the powerful force. The powerful force is nature, and viruses and microbes are a power that we can't even imagine how big they are, right? That's the first thing. The second thing that I think we need to learn is that, why did this happen? I think I'm annoyed with the global world that the international organizations and countries specifically, there were no commissions that were set up. And those commissions were supposed to actually come up with, we saw very good write-ups in the Atlantic and the New York Times and several other organizations, news outlets that came up with coming up very clear prescriptions, including banning wildlife trade. Of course, there's a large amount of community that depends on hunting wildlife, but that is restricted. Of course, we need to conserve their traditional practice of hunt and consume what is called bushmeat. that is perfectly fine. But taking exotic animals transboundary outside their ecological realm is not right. And the third and final thing is, it was a big shake-up. Countries do not communicate, communities don't communicate. We saw misinformation, disinformation, and very poor scientific practices. And we are seeing this again. And with in just 5 years, we've cut down funding into science, into basic science. All those things are really, really tragic and something that we should be very alarmed about.
We are still yet not out of the pandemic. How soon we'll get another pandemic from the viral sources?
Well, it's difficult to predict, but we are creating the conditions for the next pandemic to happen. We have done nothing for reducing deforestation, the intensity in which we extract from the animal world, especially livestock. We have not stopped animal trade, like I keep saying this. I think we've also not kept surveillance. I mean, we thought, even if you think there's a danger, we're not looking at, where the dangers can come from, right? Even for known diseases, Nipah, Hendra, dengue, chikungunya, there is no active surveillance, whether at the local level or the global level. Nothing exists. And this is, again, whatever little existed is also being dismantled. So in terms of, the larger problem of when the next pandemic will happen, actually, the next pandemic might be happening and we don't know. It might not be happening in human terms, it might be happening in an animal. COVID itself can reassemble. I'm not so worried about influenza. Influenza, although, will be more problematic because duck and chicken and wildfowl will carry it, and they can take it across continents. That could be the problem. But the real problem is that if it crosses over into humans, how quickly will governments respond to produce effective vaccine, and whether they will give it to the poorest of the poor, or whether they are going to charge $10 or $50 or $100. Those are the kind of problems that are there because there's no agreement globally on this, and that's really the problem.
So I have a final questions for you. Are you very sure that COVID-19 is over?
It's not over. It's never over because it is mutating. It's constantly mutating.
Does it have a potential that it will again have a second pandemic wave?
It is a RNA virus. It might become like an influenza, that it's going to continue circulating. It is looking as if it's going into that path. See, the DNA viruses are pretty simple. Smallpox, very good vaccine, right? So others are pretty simple. But with RNA vaccines, because they continue to mutate, they go into new populations and they emerge and they re-emerge. The thing is, there's a lack of intent and there's a repression on science because scientists themselves are not told to disclose what they find in terms of research. And if there's something very important that is found, it has to go through a channel of bureaucracy, and it's globally like that. It's not just India. And I think it's going to be the science, the lack of science communication that's going to sink us eventually.
Thank you, Pranay.
Thank you, Riji.
Thank you.